You are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first of two Rooted Vermont webinar series. We are very excited to have JaBig in the house today. The next one coming up is going to be on April the 14th, so that's going to be live from SBQR. JaBig and I are both in the state of California. We are a mere probably 300 miles away, and thanks to modern technology, we are able to have this conversation. First things first, JaBig, welcome to the Rooted Vermont live webinar. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, now let's see. I want to set the stage. I feel like your name has been looping around cycling circles for a little while now, on account of some of your recent accomplishments, which I think is all the more interesting and fascinating because admittedly you are not a lifelong cyclist. But before we even get into these conversations, first things first, can you please pronounce your full name? Go.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Rene Vigirimana, and the whole JaBig thing comes from the initials of I have a hyphenated name and a long surname. So I decided that as a DJ, it was going to be, snappier and cooler to just go for JaBig. So JaBig is not some sort of like weird, it's not illusion of a grandeur. It's not something I made up to be, it's nothing to do with the creator. It's just Jean-Aimé Bigirimana.
Well, terrific name. It sticks with you. I remember seeing your name for the first time and seeing some of those accomplishments. So I promise to our pure cycling fans, we will talk about bikes. But I'd like to lay a little more groundwork. So correct me if I'm wrong. You were born in Rwanda, migrate to Kenya, then South Africa, eventually Montreal, and now, despite being on the road a lot, you are calling Vancouver home. Tell us about that entire span of life. I know that's a big question, but give us a little bit of backstory there, please.
So I was born in 1979, so I'm 42 years old, almost 43. So I was born in Rwanda, and in 1988 I moved to Kenya, and I spent until 1993 I was in Kenya, and then went back to Rwanda, and the genocide happened in 1994. So we managed to escape it and moved back to Kenya, then South Africa in 1997 or 98, I don't remember. And then we eventually moved to Canada in 2002, in December 2002, because I'll never forget, because it was at the beginning of winter. And if most of you have seen Cool Runnings, if you know that film, that was the exact thing. We were like, okay, it's cold. It was okay. And then we got out of the airport. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad, because the first door opened. I was like, oh, it's not that bad. But what we didn't know is that there's always a second door, because the whole concept of two doors does not exist in. I had never seen such a thing in Africa. And then that wind came. I thought somebody threw a bucket of water on me, and I guess that was Canada. And so I've been here since 2002, and I moved to Montreal, and I've been, I guess it's going to be 20 years I've been around, and when I moved to Montreal, I started with my DJ career. I was already DJing, but I really went pro. Since I'm speaking to a pro, let me use big words. I went pro in 2002. I was pro, but I went international when I moved to Canada. And that's where I started making a name of myself as a DJ. However, it's only when I started a YouTube channel that everyone around the world started to know who I was. But it wasn't, they knew who my music were. They listened to my music, and by association knew who I was. And ever since, and I was a DJ, traveling the world, spinning different parts. And then one day, it's actually, I don't know how much time we have, but it's a story. Like, I got into accident by it's just like a random accident, It's one of the craziest stories. I got a bike, and then I got hooked. And 6 months later, I decided to ride across Canada on a fixed gear bike, starting in winter and eventually ending in winter.
Perfect jump off point right there. So you've hit my radar on account of some, well, I guess 3 major rides. The first one you're just talking about. Let me say the details and jump in if I'm saying anything incorrectly. 2015, you went 17,000 kilometers, which is a bit over 10,000 miles, all across Canada, and ending at the Arctic Circle. Like you said, you did it on a single speed bike.
Fixed gear. It's a correction. Fixed gear.
Which
it's important.
Okay, all the crazier. First and only person in history to cycle across Canada, coast to coast to coast, and by which you mean from what, Atlantic to Pacific, and then to the northern coast, the Arctic Circle, in winter on a fixed gear bicycle. In order, well, not necessarily in order to. So I'm curious if this was your goal. You broke the Guinness World Record of longest journey by bicycle in a single country. What was your goal jumping off on that initial adventure?
Actually, my aim wasn't to start in winter. My aim wasn't to start a Guinness World Record. My aim was to get away because I was feeling a little bit burned out by DJ career. I remember, there was this one club in Montreal that was not named, but, I have a lot of Montrealers watching. And I've really wanted to DJ there ever since I moved to Montreal. And then one day I got the gig and I go there. And then I was like, oh, is that how it feels? It really feels, it's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I told myself, I'm almost 40. I'm a DJ. It's starting to happen that my friends are telling me, hey, my kid was at your club, and and I'm like, this is weird. What do I do with the rest of my life? And like I said, I had got into cycling, and I found out that when I was riding a bike, that's when I could think clear. I could escape into cycling, and then when I came back to real life, I had a little bit of distance and perspective. So then I really got fed up, and I said, you know what, I'm out of here, and I decided I'm just gonna go ride across Canada to clear my mind. The average person will walk around the block. I guess I needed to go around the country.
Yeah.
But when I thought I'm going to ride across Canada, I really didn't think much of it. For me, I just want to get away, and then everything will sort itself out. And the reason I left in January was not because it was a challenge. It's just because I came up with the idea in November, and I would have left in December if even November right away. It's just that in December for DJs, it's the most lucrative month because with the Christmas parties and New Year's Eve. So I needed to put money aside because I knew I was going to go for long periods of time without working. And here's the fun part. In my naive mind, I really thought I was going to go from Montreal to the Atlantic Ocean, which is in Newfoundland. I mean, some of you might need a map, but Newfoundland is really far. And then turn around, go to Vancouver, and then go to the Arctic Ocean. And I remember telling everybody, yeah, don't worry about it. I'll be back in 6 months. And 6 months, I was not even back in Montreal because I had to go, to the Atlantic and come back. I was not even back in Montreal.
Yeah.
And eventually I would finish the following March, a year later. And that was in 2016, by the way. So I rode across Canada between 2016 and 2017.
Okay.
So the trip was actually 2 winters, So some people, because sometimes people will say, but there's not a year of winter in Canada. I'm like, first of all, it's Canada. Winter starts early and finishes, late. So I rode from January until until March or April the following year. And I remember getting to Montreal. Like in May, it was still snowing where I was. And then I went through June. And then by the time I got to October into the Rocky Mountains, it was already snowing again. So I got into the Rocky Mountains when it was snowing. And from October until January, it was snowing. Actually, at some stage, it stopped snowing because it was so cold, it wouldn't snow anymore. And it was minus 40. And minus 40, that's when the, Celsius and Fahrenheit meet. So minus 40, I did a little of that. So the intention wasn't to go right across Canada. It was just to get away. And then nobody believed it. The mechanics, initially when they set my bike, because I had to go get another frame that was a little bit more, up, because I'd learned a new word, it was less aggressive. So I've been doing some homework and learning some technical cycling terms so that I don't embarrass myself. So I'd gotten a less aggressive frame that could take wider tires. And, and so even the mechanics, when they set my bike, they set it in single speed. And I'm like, no, I want it 50. They're like, you can't do it. I'm like, you can't do it. I'm going to do it. And everyone was like, okay, that whole Canadian polite way, as in, sure, meaning he's crazy, but because we're polite, we don't say that.
Right.
And my friends were like, first of all, you heard the cold in winter, even in the 15 or 16 years you've been in Canada, all the time in winter, you get up, you leave Montreal and you go spend winters somewhere warm. You don't like the cold and you don't like risk. What are you going to do? Why are you doing that? And so people knew. Those who don't know me well knew I was just going to go and then come back. Now, those who know me, they were worried because they knew I would come back in a casket before admitting defeat. And that actually what worried my parents and my siblings. They knew I was going to be so stubborn that I would probably die before coming home. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a whole, dark podcast. But then I went, and for me, honestly, the biggest thing was to get started because I'm actually very risk averse. I'm not a risk taker, and I know people are gonna say that you've done this, but I'm not really a risk taker. I like life to be safe, and for me, the biggest accomplishment was leaving my house. Because once I left the house and I was outside in the cold, I knew, okay, the hardest part is done. I'm just going forth.
So I got into cycling in New England, in New Hampshire and Vermont, which are very close to Montreal. We know a thing or two about what it's like to be in cold weather also. It's taken me the better part of 20 years to acquire the right clothing and hardware and figure out those tricks and tips that allow me to get through a winter. Like what is going to keep my hands warm? What is going to keep my toes warm so that I don't feel like it's dangerous? So then raise the bar to going further north, starting from Montreal. And at that point, how far into your, call it, cycling career are you? Because you had only recently picked up cycling, is that right?
Yeah. So I got my bike in June, and I decided to do the trip in October, November. And the reason also I came up with the idea was, like I said, I need to, a reminder, I'm a DJ. So for me, I'm not like most DJs who work Monday to Sunday, I like life. So I usually work Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings. So during the days, I have a lot of free time. And so when I got into cycling, I would just ride from Monday to Friday because I learned something important. When you're a DJ, you don't want to ride on a bicycle during the day because when you're standing, when you're standing for like 6 hours, the cramps come knocking. So I learned very quickly that I don't ride a bike the day when I'm DJing. And so I was riding a lot of distances, and within one summer, somebody had told me you need to join this site called Strava. It's this little thing that you can just log your distances. So I looked at this Strava thing and I said, oh wow, I've covered 5,000 kilometers. I don't know what it is in mileage. I don't use the
about 3,000 miles. Yep.
Yeah. And I told myself, oh, that's almost from Montreal to Vancouver. And I'm like, oh, I've ridden from Montreal to Vancouver. So in my head, I was like, oh, wow, And then one day I was like, I'm going to ride from Montreal to Vancouver. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do all of Canada. So it was in less than 6 months. That's when I came up with all this. And by the way, when I got my bike, because, I got the new bike and the new frame and with the tires, I think I rode the bike once, and then the following day, that's when I started my journey.
Oh my word! Everything about it is so impressive. How much logistical planning did you have? I mean, did you know point to point or roughly the distances you were going to go, or what are the logistics that allow you to sleep at night with a roof over your head, or are you camping out?
So I decided to. So basically, one thing I do is like I've never camped in my life, and I've never done anything crazy like that. So I figured, okay, I'm going to ride a bike first of all, I'm gonna go back to, like, because I've learned about, back then backpacking did not exist. It was back touring.
Yep.
I'm gonna do back touring, and I'm gonna go from one place to another place. And I've never ridden a bike in winter, so that's already one challenge. And now I'm gonna have to camp. I'm like, okay, let's come, let me calm myself down. I'm doing like white people stuff, and I'm just gonna stick to cycling, because the riding in winter and the camping, that's a little bit too much. I'm gonna stick to the whole cycling. And I figured also it's gonna allow me not to have to carry around a lot of weight, because I'm in fixed gear and I've driven enough distance to know the challenges were the hills, and so I figured I'm going to stay with friends, and that's where the beauty of being a DJ helps. I know a lot of people.
Sure.
Well, let me put it this way: a lot of people know of me, so I figured I'm just going to start with my friends, and then word we're gonna get around. And I'd also heard about a website called Couchsurfing, and another one called Warm Showers, which is Couchsurfing but for cyclists. It's basically cyclists hosting cyclists. Cool. So I decided I'm just gonna go with that. And really, when I started, it was just to get to Quebec. Quebec was like 200 kilometers away. Let me start with a city called Trois-Rivières, and then Quebec, and I just keep going one day at a time. So before I knew it, I was, on the Atlantic coast, and then I was like, it wasn't that bad. What is everyone fussing about? Yes, it was cold and this and that.
Yeah.
And then I turned around, but then that's when I discovered what a headwind was.
Exactly. In the background, I'm thinking, yeah, there's a prevailing west to east wind across at least the United States. I imagine it's the same thing up north.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I had tailwind, because for those who are into fixed gear, I started at like a 46 and 17 gear ratio.
Okay.
Which is pretty hard for somebody, with weight. I mean, carrying some cargo and also going up hills and on mountains. But then when I turned around, I remember going to the back shop and saying, "Hey, please lower my gear ratio. I can't take it anymore. This wind is just killing me." That's where I really discovered that cycling is not about the hills; it's about the wind. So I started fussing about the weather. I stopped fussing about the weather, and now every morning, what I cared about was the wind. And if it would be too windy, I would just take a break and wait for the following day, and then ride longer, because even a short distance with the wind, it was just too demoralizing, And I remember I think few of the times I almost quit wasn't because of the weather; it was because of the wind. I mean, the wind is part of the weather, but I'm talking about temperatures versus the wind.
So we could make this talk entirely about that initial journey, but
Yes.
I prefaced introducing your cycling by saying you've hit my radar on account of 3 major rides. That was the first. The next, I think it was August 2018. You set out on an attempt to ride the entire world, 100,000. 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Correct. On what was estimated to be a 5-year, 100,000 kilometer or 60,000 mile journey. Obviously, the way the world has unfolded, you quickly ran into a thing called COVID. How did you certainly traveled quite a bit leading up to that? How did that trip go?
Well, first of all, I want to admit here for the first time in public that COVID saved my dignity, because I was way underprepared, way underfunded, way under everything, And then COVID happened. I was like, I mean, it seems wrong because people passed away, and and it paralyzed the world. But when it comes to my trip, it really was. I was not. I mean, it was riding around Canada was one thing, around the world was another. But I managed to get through from Montreal to Boston, and then from Boston, I flew to the United Kingdom and across the UK, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Switzerland, and then I was in Switzerland, and life was so expensive. I think what I spent in Switzerland was maybe 70% of all my budget was spent in Switzerland, because Switzerland. I mean, I thought Switzerland was expensive, but it was really expensive, and that's with friends hosting me, and and people taking care of me. I discovered that if anyone is listening, do not book a train ticket on the same day in Switzerland. Never do that. Never make that mistake. And don't think that like most countries, a bicycle is free to bring your bicycle into the train. It's not, you know. So Switzerland was expensive, and then I decided to take a break to go back to around Christmas to go to the UK to DJ, because London is the city where I get the most bookings, because that's where you know, I have the most notoriety. And then I DJed, and when I was about to go back to Switzerland to resume the ride, you know, we heard about this thing in Asia that was paralyzing Asia. And then before I knew it, the Canadian High Commission, which is the embassy, they called me and they said, you need to go back home. I'm like, what are you talking about? And the reason they call me is just because when I travel abroad, I always register myself so that if something happens, you know, it's always something I do. And people say, why are you so paranoid? I'm like, well, it worked, because they did call me and they said, you need to go home. You know, the borders, like, you know, the Europe is shutting down its borders. I'm like, Europe doesn't have borders. What are you talking about? You know, it's EU. But then, yes, they were shutting down borders. And then, you know, the person at the High Commission told me, you need to go back home. It's 2 weeks to flatten out, you know, it's 2 weeks to flatten out the, you know, the curve, whatever it is. And then I went back home, and yeah, you know, the rest is nothing happened. It's not even history. Nothing happened. So yeah, so I'd set up to go on a ride to raise funds for World Bicycle Relief, because the first journey across Canada was just something I did for myself. And then the second time, because I remember everyone kept telling me, what are you riding for? I'm like, what do you mean? What charity are you riding for? I'm like, I'm not riding for a charity. I just want to see Canada and escape for a second, you know? And then I realized that for some weird reason, you cannot go on a bicycle ride until, you know, unless there's a charitable element to it. And I decided, okay, you know, actually, I'd like to send some bicycles to children in Africa, because it's something that's important to me. For me, I ride bikes for fun, but for them, it can just, you know, some kids can get to school. And then I figured, that's a very cool idea, but I'm sure somebody out there must have come up with it. So then I went on Google and typed in, and then I came across World Bicycle Relief, and that blew my mind, because they had thought of something I never thought of, which is to create a whole industry behind it. Because I realized that what I wanted to do was noble but not smart, because once you send a bicycle somewhere, unless you're sending the parts, you're pretty much dumping something, because once the bike breaks down, then what happens? But World Bicycle Relief would actually send the components to parts of Africa, and then from there have someone build the bikes, creating a whole industry. And that was very, you know, I like that. So then I contacted them and said, this is what I want to do. Do you mind if I, you know, raise funds for you? And they said, yeah, sure. So I said, okay, this is going to be to see the world, but also to raise funds for World Bicycle Relief, which I managed to do. However, the pandemic, you know, ruined those dreams.
That is incredible. And so, yeah, to shamelessly throw it out there, what is, not shamelessly, it's such a great organization. What is the link? How can people find your fundraising link?
I mean, I have my fundraising link, but right now I can't link to it, so I don't know where it is. But just go to Google World Bicycle Relief and just make a donation. It doesn't matter whether you donate through my link or not. You know, what matters is that people do get, you know, the charity gets the funds, and then they really, you know, unlike most charities where you say what happened to the money, you can actually, you donate the money and then you can see the bicycle. You know what I mean? You can see it, but you can, it's something tangible. Because some charity you send money, hey, we're gonna feed people, we're going to build this, and then you're like, where's the this that you get money for? And you never see it. World Bicycle Relief, you actually see the children on the bicycles, or the farmers, or the health practitioners. You know, you actually see, and the bicycle is such something. For us, it's for fun. For you, I mean, for me, it's for fun. For you, it's your, you know, profession. Hopefully, it's fun for you too. You know, but in some parts of the world is to open, you know, to give opportunities to others, because it's hard to believe that the reason some people don't go to school is because they can't get to school, because school is too far. And that's just crazy, you know. I mean, that's just insane, actually. So if a bicycle can close the gap, to use another technical term I learned, you know, to get ready, you know, close the gap, and why not?
Sure. How about Can you tell us about the current trip that you're on? Because now you're on a trip across North America. I think probably as a result of COVID, like you said, you were brought back to North America. You're on something of an adventure as we speak. So tell us about the current big one that you're on, please.
Yeah, I think as far as I'm concerned, I think riding around the world in today's world after COVID, and then with what's going on around the world, it seems like now after COVID, everyone have decided to, I don't know, wars have started. So I figured now I'm just gonna do a few places that I've wanted to ride all my life. And as a Canadian citizen, come to the US often. But I figured, I know the US from at the end of the day, all I know about the US is from the little I've seen and what I know from the media. And I like to see things with my very own eyes. So I decided, let me go ride around the US. And why not? And yes, perhaps I'm not raising funds riding around the world, but I'm riding around the US. Why not raise funds for World Bicycle Relief? So I decided to just do a whole loop around the US, within the continental US, because some people say, hey, that's not the whole US. There's Alaska missing and there's Hawaii missing. And I'm like, okay. But most people know the US as being continental US, and and anyway, I don't need to do Alaska because I did it parallel when I was in Canada. So, it's the same thing, from Whitehorse all the way to the Arctic Ocean. It's the same thing as going through Alaska. So I decided to ride along the Pacific coast, along the Pacific coast, and along. Oh, where are you? Ooh, I lost you. Sorry, I need to take my phone because
you're right.
It rings on my laptop, and it just. Yeah, so I decided to ride around the US within along the Pacific, Mexican border, Atlantic, and then along the Canadian border, all within the US. So starting and ending in Seattle. And I have 6 months to do it because as a Canadian citizen, I'm allowed to stay in the US for 6 months. So I have to do it within 6 months. But I'm already running behind. So I might have to chop some bits and pieces, like for instance, South Florida, I might have to say goodbye to it. And instead of going all the way to Portland, I might have to stop in Boston, even New York City. And who knows, even when I get north and I'm running out of time, I might have to do North Dakota and Montana, which are nothing much going on there. And I'm sorry if you're from there. I might have to do it within Canada and then goes back into the Cascade Mountains. And I'll let you guess why the Cascade Mountains, has something to do with our friends at Rene Herse, because they talk about them so much that I had to go check them out for myself. And then from there, meet up with some people from Rafa and Rene Herse actually that are going to come and meet me. And we're going to do the whole finale in Seattle. Hopefully I'm going to have both of my legs that are still working.
Mm-hmm. How about we talked about it a little bit before going live here. Talk to the audience and give me even more information about some of the logistical details, because there are things you might need on a particular day, but you might not need for a few more days at a time. So how much stuff are you carrying versus perhaps packing and shipping up the road?
So when I crossed the border from Vancouver into Seattle, and I had everything, to quote another expression I learned, but the kitchen sink, and I had like my laptop, I had my, I had PJs, I had everything, I had shoes, I had everything. And when I hit the first hill in, from Bellingham to Seattle, and that's when I rode with Jan from Rene Herse. I was like, I was trying to save pace and ride as fast as he can because he's very fast. He's very fast. Mm-hmm. And by the time I got to Seattle, I was completely broken and tired. So I decided to get rid of a lot of stuff. So I left some of the stuff in Seattle, and the others. Somebody told me that there's something in the US where you can get a box. It's a box big like this, and you can throw things in there, and you can send it anywhere you want in the US for $20. Weight doesn't matter. You can, as long as the content fits in that box, you can send it for $20. So then I decided my laptop, shoes, things that I don't need every day, they're gonna go in there, and I'm gonna send them to the major cities where I'm going. So I send it to Portland, then San Francisco, and Los Angeles, where I am right now. And after this, because I need to make up for lost time, I'm going to send it all the way to Austin. So until I get to Austin, I'm not going to be able to shave. I'm not going to be able to use my laptop. I'm not going to be able to use I'm not going to be able to wear shoes. I'm just going to have to wear my cycling shoes. Basically anything that can save weight, because I need to, for me, the less weight I have, the faster I can go, but also the less tired I am. So I can ride big rides every single day. So like right now, the reason I'm actually talking to you right now was because I knew we were doing this today. So I waited for a bit. But after I speak to you, tomorrow I'm going to the post office and this laptop is being shut and being sent forward.
Very good thinking. What I could probably reverse engineer it and do the math. What kind of distances are you doing on any given day or maybe any given week?
So I ride according to accommodation. Again, I don't camp because I don't want to camp, And again, and the reason I don't want to camp, I know that back touring is about camping. For most people, that's what they look forward to. For me, I want to ride my bicycle. I don't want to camp. I don't want to carry anything. The reason I even have like a pannier, one bag, is because I need to carry things. If it were up to me, if I were a pro like you, I would have a team following me. The only thing I would have on my bike would be this. Not even two, one of this. And have somebody handing them to me, and when you're riding and then somebody has a bottle, I just snatch it and I drink it, and then I throw him one, this and that, and I keep going. But life is not this way, so I have to carry something minimal, like my PJs and toothbrush and everything. And yeah, so that means that my daily distances are determined by where I'm spending the night. And so in average it's 120 kilometers. But also, I've also done journeys of 180, and where I'm headed in the desert, I might have to do like daily distances of 200 kilometers. But obviously, I can ride 200 kilometers every day. So what I'm gonna do is ask the host if I can stay an extra night, so that ride every second day 200 kilometers. And there's some parts of the country where I don't want to get all political, but anyone who has a brain can figure out what I mean. Those I just want to even do like 300-kilometer days, like start early in the morning and just ride my bike, stay in the big gear and just like pedal forth. So to answer your question, it depends, but on average it's 120 kilometers, and I don't know what it is in miles, but it's probably like 80 or something like that. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, just shy of 80. I mean, yeah, very impressive distances day after day after day, which would lead me to the next question. Have you, in all of these travels, have you had any overuse injuries?
Actually, I didn't know that when because I wanted to upgrade my saddle, everything. But when I upgraded my saddle, I got the right brand and the right everything, but I got the wrong size. I mean, I didn't know saddles had sizes until it started hurting. So so from day one, I was in pain. So I rode for a month in absolute agony, and I couldn't figure out why. Because I rode that saddle around Europe, the first trip in Europe, and the second time across Canada. Because that's one thing we forgot to mention. I rode across Canada during the pandemic, actually, and the saddle was okay, but I couldn't figure out why it was giving me so much grief. And it turns out it was the wrong size. But the damage was already done. That's why I had to sit here for 3 weeks. And until now, even when I sit on a wooden chair, it hurts, So now, I went to a backfitter here called Steve. He's like somebody everyone knows, swear by in the city. And I went and he fixed me, so I'm ready to hit the road. But when it comes to technicalities, so far, knock on wood, nothing happens because I am backchondriac. You don't even know that term. I just thought you're a new term, And what happened is that whenever in a major city, I just get my bike serviced. Even I usually take my bike and they're like, "Oh, so what's wrong?" I'm like, "Nothing, but it's a bike and it wants to break down. So can you please tell me?" And turns out what I do is sound, because, for instance, when I went to San Francisco and I went to above category, they told me you need new bearings for your wheel. Like, what is that? I said, no, don't worry, I'll write it an email. So then I got the email and I forwarded it to Shram and Zip, and I said, I need new bearings, and they sent it to me in LA, and and I got the new bearings and it turns out my bearing was so bad that if I'd got into the desert, I would have gotten a problem. So prevention is better than cure. Other than that, and the tires, I like to joke around that I don't even know how to fix tires, and people say, "What do you mean you don't know how to fix tires?" I'm like, well, because I ride on tires that don't tend to puncture. That's why I don't know how to fix a flat, because I seldom get flats. And when I do, tubeless takes care of it. Or, if it's really bad, I've learned to do the plug thing. So I just plug, and everything is okay. And also when I ride, because I'm so paranoid, I look, people sometimes will say, "Oh, how were the mountains today? Did you enjoy the scenery?" I'm like, actually, I didn't. I was too busy looking at the street, at the floor. Especially I found that in California, they throw a lot of bottles. I don't know why, but California and Oregon, they throw a lot of bottles, on the ground. And somebody told me that apparently it's because if the police catches you with a bottle in the car, that's automatically they assume that we're drinking and driving. So I guess when people drink, they just chuck the bottles on the road for us cyclists to ride over and get flats. I mean, them, not me, because like I said, I have puncture tires, puncture resistant. Which means that in this kind of week, I'm going to have all the punctures on the planet, because you know how it is. When you run your mouth, then you run out of sealant. So I'm probably going to get all the flats this coming week. Yeah.
Talking about hardware, how do you choose a tire? Are you trying to fit just the widest tire in because it's going to be the most comfortable, or have you? Even going back to the trip in Canada, you probably had tread at some point. The question being, how do you choose a tire?
Well, there's this man called Ted King, and he wrote an article in a blog called, by Rene Herse, that says how I choose my tires. And he's a bicycle racer. So I figured I'm going to take everything he says and divide it by 100, because, I'm a normal human being, this and that. So I ride an open upper frame, which has a lot of clearance, and it can go up to 40 millimeters. And so I decided the rule of thumb is just go as wide as possible, because the issue is not with the width, it's with the casing. And if you have good casing, then the width doesn't matter. But also for me, it's actually more comfortable to have a wider tire, because it's less prone to. It's more comfortable because it's the width, and I can put low pressure, which also makes it less prone to punctures, which actually is also a lifesaver, because let's say, for instance, if there's a pothole and I'm on a tight road and there's traffic behind me, I don't need to swerve into traffic and dodge it or do bunny hops. I just go straight, and I'm like, okay, I guess that was it. And the tire will take it because it's wide. And I take the endurance casing just because, like I said, I'm not very comfortable with flats. And even though they don't flat often, but it's that peace of mind, because at the end of the day, most of the cycling for me, I find is peace of mind. If I have peace of mind about something, then I'm more comfortable, because also that stress, am I going to get a flat? Am I going to get flat? That's not good stress to have. So I just take the most puncture resistant. And I don't really feel the change in speed, because I'm not out there to be the fastest, but I don't even notice. I won't even notice. All I know is that I notice it compared to the hard casings. And so I pick the biggest, the widest size my bike can fit, and then that's it. So actually, if the company wink wink had met like a very slick 55, because right now they're on the 55, I would have probably gotten a 650B wheel and put the biggest 55, the slick on it, just for the extra width and also the for the extra comfort. Because for me, I'm not the fastest cyclist. I'm not fast. I'm not fast at all. But I find that the less time I can get off a bike because of I'm taking breaks, that's how I make up my time. If instead of an hour and a half on one of my ride, if I take just like half an hour, then that's a whole hour saved, and most of it is through the tires and some other components. Because if I'm comfortable, and then I don't need to stop, and that's why with the saddle I was losing so much time, because I kept stopping to to rest my bum, and hopefully now I'm gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I'm often asked, how do I choose my tires? And I'm doing races that might be 3 hours long or 10 hours long, certainly not 10,000 kilometers or 10,000 miles effectively doing this time trial you're doing. But we both bark up the same tree, which is a flat tire is going to slow you down. So I end up typically choosing the more durable tire in competition, but also knowing that, Rene Herse has this wonderful spread of extra light to standard to endurance or endurance plus, and they're all incredibly they're incredibly fast tires. There's the counter intuition that a wide tire is going to slow you down, but pardon me for the loud motorcycle. It's completely counterintuitive, and it's not slowing you down. What does slow you down is having a flat tire, and
and the whole irony of
it's
it,
cool
because
that we're.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, the whole irony of it is that I've ridden the extra light and the standard casing, and the few flats I've had were on the hard ones, not on the light ones. So it means that at the end of the day, flats most of the time it's a matter of bad luck than anything, but for me, like I said, the extra light, which make a difference, like the extra, it's crazy, like the nobbies on extra lights, you can feel the difference, versus, for instance, like a slick, like, the endurance one, you can just feel it. But like I said, for me, it's just peace of mind, and like I said, if I were more comfortable with flats and this and that, then I would just ride, like the extra light, because the comfort and the speed is pretty noticeable. However, I stick with, like I said, peace of mind is important to me. But if I'm in let's say, for instance, if I'm in Vancouver or I'm in Montreal, then I stick with extra light, because if I have a flat, first of all, it's gonna seal itself. But if it's bad, I know who to call. Some of my friends, unfortunately, they know by now that when I call them, it's time for them to come and pick me up wherever I
am. Nice. How do you approach the perspective of these enormous rides? It's sort of a question of, are you looking at the forest, or are you looking at the trees? Do you look at each day as just one day at a time, or are you looking at the huge picture and saying, okay, I am 10% through this entire journey, or 25% through? Or just, what is your perspective on these rides?
Well, if I think I'm going to ride around the US, that's the easiest way to chicken out and to drive myself crazy. Like, for instance, right now, my next destination is, I'm going to San Diego. And then when I get to San Diego, I'm saying I'm going to Phoenix, which is pretty much, I count on a weekly basis. And then when I get to Phoenix, I'm going to say I'm going to Tucson. So I learned it's Tucson, not Tucson. It's Tucson.
Correct.
And there I might actually bump into a mutual friend, Lael. I'm excited. She's gonna be doing her time trial in Arizona, wishing her well. But she might be finished by the time I get there. But I know she's very fast, so I might bump into her. And then from there, from Tucson, I'm going all the way to Austin. So it's basically on a weekly basis. So planning, like, on a weekly basis. But I just know that, generally speaking, I want to be in New York City in June, because I have DJ things to do. But other than that, I just pretty much take it like on a weekly basis. Otherwise, it's just too much logistics to deal with. And also, I don't have my laptop. So I need my laptop to, to document everything, to organize where I'm going to be spending the night, and, run my finances and this and that. So on a weekly basis is what keeps it manageable.
Makes perfect sense. And how about, I know your motivation initially to do that first trip, it was, like you said, to clear your mind, to go on this sort of outlandish journey. What is your motivation now to have done the trip in 2019, or to do this one now? Is it Is it World Bicycle Relief? Is it, this selfish love for cycling that I think any cyclist has? Is it a cool way to see the world, or all of the above?
Well, it's actually it's a funny question, because I had on the bicycle, if you ride, people think that being on a bicycle is running away from your problems. It's actually the worst. It's facing your problems, because you're on a bike, especially if you're climbing a big hard pass. You need to distract yourself, so you usually go into your thoughts. And I've been wondering, at this stage, am I riding for social media applause, or am I riding for social cause? Or is it for myself? What am I doing? And then I came up with a conclusion that life doesn't have to be black and white. It can just be, a little bit of white, pink, navy blue, and it's a little bit of both. So my motivation is to see the US first and foremost, because the whole irony of the thing, and again, maybe it's not politically correct to say such a thing, or I shouldn't show my cards, but actually raise more money as a DJ when I'm spinning. If I throw a party and I had people coming and they pay tickets and this and that, I will actually raise more money than riding a bike. Because at the end of the day, people donating to a cause like he's riding a bike, there's nothing in it for them. But if I'm doing a party and they're coming and they're dancing and they're having food and this and that, that's more selfish, because they're paying for something that benefits them directly. They're going to donate, So as a matter of efficiency, riding a bicycle, for me, it's not actually the most efficient. It would be to throw a party and DJ, because that's something that, if we're talking about efficiency, to raise money. I mean, in the pandemic, I was having parties from a laptop. I was DJing at home and getting from a DJ equipment and playing songs, and I was raising more money for the World Bicycle Relief than when I'm riding a bike. So, but riding a bike around the US, I get to do the three things at the same time, which is to escape and take some air, discover the United States, and have a lot of friends here. Oh my gosh, I'm against the light. Yeah. To discover the US, and also to ride my bike, and to also, the pandemic, I think by summer, I'm going to be done with the pandemic. The pandemic is going to be done, so I'm going to go back to DJing. So it's going to be back, I'm sort of it's like going on a big holiday before I go back to being a DJ. However, I'm loving this cycling too much that now I'm going to be incorporating into my DJing. Like, for instance, whenever I usually travel by a fly or a drive. This time, why not? Why not cycle? Let me just arrange this. Yeah.
Perfect answer. I mean, yeah, the efficiency is such a common word in cycling. It's what allows you to move quickly. It allows you to move more quickly. To just learning strength to weight ratios, and the most pliable tire and all these things. But it's cool to see a much bigger picture of what you're talking about with efficiency of bicycle for this current chapter. Well, to be perfectly honest, I feel like I could ask you questions again back on that original trip across Canada, coast to coast to coast, nonstop for about 3 hours. But for the sake of your rest, for the sake of the planning that you have to do, I'm going to let you continue on your journey. I am incredibly grateful for your time this afternoon, this evening. I'm psyched to be following along. So thank you for everything you're doing for the sport of cycling, and for DJing, and for producing the music that you produce. It's incredible. So thank you very much, JaBig.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, folks. Yeah, huge thanks to JaBig for being on this live webinar with Rooted Vermont. The next one is going to be, I want to say, is a Thursday, April 14th. We're going to be at SPQR with Chef Matt Accarino. And that's all I got. Please share this video if you found it interesting or informative. And that is all. So have a great night. JaBig. Good luck with the next piece of the journey, and then onward after that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.